Well, hi there, and welcome back to my practice room. It's me, Penny, and if you clicked on this video, then chances are you're trying to improve your part playing at the piano. Maybe you're working on a fugue or a sinfonia like the one I've got here for us today, and you're trying to listen to your three voices, the four voices, however many you've got, in such a way that you can give them great individuality and expression and character so that they become not like just keys that you push or notes on the page, ink on the page, but rather characters, musical characters, like in a novel or a movie, that have their own personality and their things to say. They have things to contribute to the musical story that you're trying to tell, right? And I always like coming up with analogies and props as well is something I would like to use more often. I don't have much in that department, but I was trying to think, how could I relate, visually speaking, polyphonic music, which is what the majority of Bach's music is. Polyphonic, poly meaning many, phonic meaning sound. So many sounds or many melodies moving simultaneously. And the trick, or the secret to playing this music well, I think, apart from many hours of practice, is to learn to look and read the notes horizontally. So I was trying to think of what I could show you, and I came up with the idea of scarves, because I was thinking these parts are like ribbons, right? Let's say the piece that we're looking at, by the way, is Sinfonia No. 8 in F major, BWV 794 by J.S. Bach. And those three voices, I think of them as ribbons on the page. Imagine three different colors of ribbons. And when you read the notes, you don't want to just see, okay, in this bar I'm seeing a red, a yellow, and a blue. And then next bar, same. But you want to see the whole red strand of ribbon, the whole yellow strand, the whole blue strand. So I dug up some scarves, and my mom, if she's watching, she'll say, "Oh, I remember those scarves." I realize they don't match at all, but they're scarves that I like, and I think they make a point. Now, I've got three of them because this is a three-voice piece, right? We got three voices, soprano, alto, and bass. So imagine then that this scarf, how am I going to do this? I need a third hand here. You see where I'm going with this, right? We're learning to read horizontally. That is the key to playing Bach's music well, right? So this is the best I can do, okay? So the one on the bottom, the green one, I'm imagining that's my bass. The one in the middle, the bluish paisley one, that's my alto. And this yellow one on top is my soprano. You see, when you look at these, your eye follows each one. It looks at the whole yellow one, and then the whole blue one, the whole green one, rather than looking at, an inch vertically and then another inch vertically going eventually across the whole stretch of the ribbons, or the scarves in this case, but looking at them in a linear fashion, horizontally. Bach's music is about lines, and the sooner that you can learn to look in that fashion, and that really has nothing to do with the fingers and the technique. It's very much a looking game, playing this music, right? So that is what I'm trying to show here, and I have for you. I'm going to put it on the screen. A copy of the sheet music. Did I mention the piece? I think I did. Sinfonia No. 8 in F major. And this sheet music looks quite colorful to you, I'm sure. And what I have, I've taken each of the three voices, alto, soprano, and bass, and I've colored them in. The yellow is for alto, the red is our soprano, and the blue is our bass. Now, if this is helpful for you because it's maybe hard to look at the notes in any fashion other than one vertical chunk or clump or stack of notes at a time, if that's how you're used to reading, then coloring in the voices like this could be helpful. That other kind of reading where we're reading in stacks of notes vertically across the page, that is more useful for when you're playing homophonic music, music that has, say, an accompaniment in the left hand, a chord, and then a melody in the right hand. I'm simplifying it, obviously, but that texture of music is much more suited to reading vertical stacks of notes on the page. But polyphonic music is linear. It's horizontal, and so the coloring of notes here on the page, I hope, will be helpful, and I would encourage you to do that. I just printed this off from the IMSLP site, and I used the Adobe highlighter tool. I just picked a color. It was very easy to do. You can actually have some fun with it. Pick your favorite colors even. So that's what I'm going to play for you to start. This is really the first thing you want to do when you're learning a piece by Bach or any composer for that matter, which is of a polyphonic texture. So let's have a listen then to the alto part, okay? Which she or he, this alto person, is the lucky chosen one in this piece who gets to begin the subject. The subject, this is simply the word we use to describe the opening theme from which the piece is built. That is the seed. That is the subject. The word subject is more commonly found when we're talking about fugues, but let's face it, these sinfonias are fugues in training, right? So there's nothing wrong with calling that our subject. And we listen for that subject as it bounces around from voice to voice. But that's not what I'm doing right now. I'm just going to play you the alto. So let's have a listen to the yellow part, our alto. Now you notice nothing happening in the alto. There's no yellow in part of measure 7, all of 8, 9, and part of 10. Ooh, she's on vacation. And then she picks up at the end of measure 10 with... Right? It's very satisfying, just that part by itself. But this piece, I would say, this Sinfonia number 8, is really a spotlight. The spotlight in this piece is on the soprano and the bass. I think those two voices are really what Bach is showcasing most in this piece. We already saw that to an extent in measure 7 through 10, where we had no alto at all. And this happens in Bach's music, where there'll be a passage where one voice just suddenly disappears, and you wonder why. Why, right? I can't think of why other than the sheer fact that when it does reappear, in this case in the end of measure 10, It is very satisfying, right? And so that is something to bring out when a voice reappears after a prolonged absence, like a relative you haven't seen in a long time and they show up at your door. Ah, there you are, right? You're happy to see them, hopefully. In this case, of course, we're happy to see the alto. Personally speaking, I have to say, I have a strong affinity, a very strong attraction for the inner voices. I don't know if it's because those feel best for me to sing. They're in my range. But for that matter, I gravitate more to the bass as well than the soprano. And the bass is far out of my voice range. Um, but especially those inner voices, I personally feel very attracted by them. I think partly it's the underdog thing, you know. The soprano always gets the spotlight, and I'm left-handed, and basically feel like I don't really fit in in society in a number of ways. I don't know. I root for the underdog. I root for the alto and the tenor and the bass too. And I I love to listen for those. Um, but in any event, when a voice is gone and then reappears, you want to make something of that. That's a big deal. We're going to hear the red part next. And the reason I'm choosing the red is because it's that red part, the soprano, which is next on deck to enter with the subject. The bass is the last one. And incidentally, this ordering of alto, soprano, bass here in Sinfonia number 8 is fairly common amongst the sinfonias. Um, 27% of the 15 sinfonias begin with the voices in that same order: alto, soprano, bass, ASB. But the vast majority of the sinfonias, 67% of them, begin with the voices in the order soprano, alto, bass. The remaining percentage, which is not much, is reserved for the order of soprano, bass, alto, which I think is Sinfonia number 15. What's interesting about that is that in all 15 of the sinfonias, the first voice to enter is a high voice, either soprano or alto, never a bass, right? So that is, you know, food for thought. Um, so let's have a listen to the red part. And I'm trying to play them. Of course, I've been playing this a long time. If I were just starting this piece, looking at it cold for the first time, I wouldn't be able to play it at this level. But you know, you even when you're taking these voices apart and getting to know them as little people, little characters, play them expressively. Try not to save your most passionate and expressive, energized playing for when you're on stage or when you're taking the exam or doing that final dress rehearsal. You spread it around evenly for all of your practicing, right? Because it makes the job far more successful and enjoyable. All right, so here is the soprano. Follow along with the red part. Here we go. That one, there's no vacation in that part for sure. She is singing the whole time. That's a really bold and vibrant soprano part at whatever tempo you choose to take it. This subject, to me, is very upright, very resolute, very bold, very much awake and sober. It's nothing sentimental and passive about this subject. It's very, very overt, extroverted, upright subject. And I forgot to mention, too, when I was saying earlier how the soprano and the bass are the ones I think, to dominate this little sinfonia. I should add, too, that the biggest point supporting that is in the number of entries each voice has in this piece. There are 23 entries that I could find. Not all of them are literal statements. There's a couple that probably couldn't really call a subject, but I'm calling them anyway, like the one in the alto at middle of measure 11, and also the middle of 13 in the bass. They're kind of altered, but nevertheless, I hear them as being so reminiscent of the subject that I consider them a subject. I've counted them. So 23 entries, and the voice, can you guess which voice has the most? You're probably thinking soprano, which I would think. But no, it was the bass. The bass has the most subject entries in this piece. 10 entries. 10 out of 23. It's almost half. If you don't count those two that are like altered, then it is half, basically. The next voice with the most entries is the soprano, with 8. And finally, the alto, who was taking that holiday for 3 bars, it has only 5 entries. So that to me is very interesting. And we should have a listen to the bass part now. And let's get into that. So the blue line, follow along horizontally with that blue ribbon, that blue scarf. See what she or he has to say. 2, 3, 4. Now, if that isn't a rip-roaring, slap-happy, fantastic bass part, I don't know what is. And this piece is only 23 bars long. That's a wonderful bass part. And all those octaves, too, eh? They lend so much robustness to the piece. You could do a workout video almost to it. It's just so robust inducing. I'm going to put on the screen here. Excuse me, I get so carried away and enjoy this music very much. I'm going to put on the screen here an even more colorful copy of the score. Now you can see those colors are still intact, but this copy, I've added a lot to it. First of all, I want you to note the black brackets. Those indicate the beginning of each of the subject entries. And I said a moment ago that I counted 23 of them. So there's 23 of those black brackets. This is something that you also should be marking in to your piece, to your sheet music. And use pencil too, Uh, if you're going to get colorful like this, best to do it on a copy in case you mess up, as I have found. This is why I keep white out. Sometimes we have an emergency in that department. But we got the subject entries with the black brackets, and following that, you see some green blobs that say stretto. Stretto in polyphonic music is where we get an entrance of the subject in close succession in multiple voices. It creates intensity and excitement to the music, you know? And so here we get quite a lot of them. The first one is at the end of measure 7, and that's between the soprano and bass. The soprano enters, and then the bass comes in, and they're both singing or playing the subject at the same time. And again, at the end of measure 8, again, soprano and bass with another stretto. Imitation between the two. When you have this imitation, it means, in a non-musical description, that the music is heating up. Things are getting intense, right? And this is usually through the middle of the piece where the imitation is at its peak. There's another stretto a bar later at the end of measure 9, again between the soprano and bass. And it's through here that our alto is on vacation and that we are getting some minor mode mixing in with some of the accidentals there. We have another little, I call it a quasi-stretto there, at the end of 11, a more legit stretto in the end of 13 between soprano and bass. Another one between soprano and alto this time at the end of 17, and they're literally at the same time. They're happening in the same rhythm. They're happening a sixth apart. 6 notes between each of those two voices there. 6 are very consonant intervals. They're very warm, like thirds are as well. And Bach uses those a lot. A bar later, at the end of measure 18, we have our last stretto, and that is between soprano and bass. Right? So lots of those green blobs and the black brackets, meaning heat up your playing, intensify, excite, energize your playing, right? Through changing your touch, your tone, versus the places where there's a little bit more of a relief, so to speak, to our ears. The pink places on the page. There's 2 of those passages, which are sequences. First one is measure 4 and 5. Repeats up a step. Starts to repeat again, up a step, a third time. Right? There's no statement of the subject in there. Of course, the material is reminiscent of the subject, but it's not a literal statement. So the sequential passages bring relief to the ears, a retreat from all this intense development. And you notice that first sequence in measure 4 happens exactly once the 3 voices, alto, soprano, and bass, have had their first turn debuting the subject, right? 3 subject entries followed by a sequence, and then it's back into more entries and stretto. We get one more sequence, and that's at the end of 19 into the beginning of 20. Sounds like this. Up a step again. Up a step again. Right? Usually these sequences happen 2 times, and then the third time you think you're going to get it, and then it veers off somewhere else. And I think that is good taste. Sometimes I like to fool around with these sequences in my shorts videos and extend them, a dozen times or more. That's fun to do as well. But yeah, that is, these are essential markings to uncover when you're learning a piece like this. And once you've done all of that, then the next thing that I like to recommend is to start combining, mixing and matching the voices in different combinations. And for this, I'm going to just use my own copy of the sheet music because my eyes are more used to it. It's hard to play from the sheet with all those colorings on it, but I'm going to leave that on the screen for you. FYI, my sheet music that I use is a Henley Urtext edition. I really like this edition, and the pages is just feels nice. It looks nice, and it's Urtext, meaning it's not edited. So when you're playing Bach, and you can find some online too, uh, for free perhaps. Do try to get Urtext editions because you want the music as Bach wrote it, as close as you can get, right? Without the hand of someone who has put their own fingerprint on it. That can be helpful actually to look at other editions and see what an editor recommends for fingering or for dynamics or whatnot. But always go to the source. Have that as your study text. So let's see. With these three voices, we've got several combinations. How many combinations? What should we do first? Let's do the outer parts. We're going to do soprano and bass. Okay, so red and blue parts. That's what I'm playing. Okay, so follow along with those colors. Soprano and bass. Remembering that those are the two voices that get the most number of entries. All right, here we go. Soprano and bass, blue and red. If we play it with enough conviction, it could almost stand as its own piece, right? It's convincing to play those two parts on their own. It's a little less convincing as a standalone piece when we play the next combination, soprano and alto. The red and the yellow. Remember that the yellow gets the least number, the alto gets the least number of entries of the subject, plus she goes on holiday for 3 bars. It measures 7 to 10. And I have to say, I'm playing this at a fairly brisk tempo, partly because this video would otherwise go on for hours, but go slowly. I promise you, I go slowly when I'm practicing these things. That is essential. But let's listen to combination 2, alto and soprano, yellow and red, the top 2 colors on your page. Here we go. And that leaves us with one more combination, the blue and the yellow, bass and alto. Okay, and you notice too in the bass part that there's a B flat pedal tone in the middle of 17 into 18. That half note that's just tied into another half note, that is kind of a surprise to the ear. Part of the advantage, the bulk of the advantage to playing these voices separately on their own is, and singing too. You notice I'm singing. I highly recommend it. It's just a way to internalize even more than what the fingers can do. But that is when you're playing one of these parts and something stands out to you as like kind of a surprise or a shock. Maybe the texture, like in that spot where there's no alto. There's also some kind of surprises. The alto has a tritone in the middle of measure 4. Tritone, F to B natural. There's a few other little spots like this. Bass has a tritone there in measure 5. There's some other spots like soprano and alto there at what is that, 13, right? Some unusual sounding, unstable kinds of progressions here. Any of these things that stand out to you, mark them in your page, because those are places to potentially bring out, to voice them, to bring them out in the finished product. So that your performance has individuality from the next person that plays this piece. And that's not to say that you have to do the exact same thing every time. You repeat the process of this thousands of times, ideally. But once you know what the parts are doing, change it up. That's the fun, my goodness. It's like, what kind of like with cookies. I like cookies. So maybe you like chocolate chip cookies, you like oatmeal raisin, and maybe peanut butter, right? But not every day you feel like peanut butter. There are some days where you just don't want it. Doesn't mean you don't like peanut butter. You just don't want it on that day. But you've tried it, right? We need to sample. We need to taste these voices. We can't literally eat them, but let your ears sample them. Taste them with your ears. And the only way to do that is to sing them and play them by themselves like this. Mark it in color if you need, whatever works, reading horizontally, following their path. Each of those colors on the page is like a little roadway. You can take the red route on the hiking trail. The trails, nature trails usually have a difficult trail, red, and then like an easy trail in green or something. It's kind of like that. You follow these lines, follow these trails, hike the trail of each of these voices. Eat the voices, sample them, taste them, get to know them. And whenever stands out, take note. Because if it surprised you, if it was a shock to your ears and fingers, it'll surprise someone else. Like the alto. I love that alto entry of the subject in the middle of 17. It's not shocking the way that was, the tritone, but it's so singable for me personally. It's in my range, and I just love to bring that moment out. Some other spots that came out for me as being a little extra special for me personally, those were places where, where'd they go? Like the alto measure 12, top of the page, measure 12, with the long notes. And then this threw me for a loop. The alto in measure 4, the back of 14. What is that? There's an augmented second. E flat to C sharp. That is just so gnarly. I love that. you know. And if you know me, you know that when I come across a passage that sort of tickles me or surprises me, I'll usually put in a little happy face there, um, or maybe a heart, or the words Mr. B with an exclamation point. Sometimes 3 exclamation points if it's really shocking. Mark stuff into your page. You know, you got your pencil and eraser handy. Use it so that you know what interests you and you can bring it out. All right. Now, let's hear the blue and the yellow, the bass and the alto. Here we go. No alto here. There she is. Ah, I can't talk and play at the same time. Let me try that again. Pick up to 10, bass entry. See, those two voices, they're like good friends of mine. The soprano is an acquaintance. I just bond with the lower voices and the inner voices especially much more. I don't know what it is. But that's what you need to do to get at the heart of Bach's music. Yes, you can do your finger exercises, your your scales and whatnot. You can practice forte, staccato. You can do a lot of overlapping. You can work on your fingering, wrist rotation, use of your back muscles. All these things, experimenting with pedal. But at the end of the day, it comes down to this: reading horizontally, giving personality to each voice, making friends with it. Talk to them, name them, name your soprano, name it, I don't know, Barbara, name your alto, Terry, and your bass, Fernando, I don't know. Have some fun with it. If you're really hard up for, trying to motivate yourself, have some fun with it in this fashion. Nothing wrong with that. And then when you know the parts better and better and eventually more intimately, then you can start to, change it up and bring out different things. I've mentioned some of the parts that I find appealing and attractive within these. Certainly those 2 sequences, and they're both ascending, by the way. I would say the majority of the sequences in Bach that I have encountered have been descending sequences. These are both ascending. And that is significant. I think when a sequence ascends, the music somehow intensifies more so than when it descends. Just like when you're climbing a mountain, it's a lot harder to go up than down, right? This kind of thing. Whew. Yeah. What else did we find? I found also the range of these voices. The alto from the D below middle C up to the E flat to above middle C. That's the range of our alto. The soprano is the C sharp, middle C sharp, up to the B flat. That's 2 above middle C. So that one is a little smaller of a range than the alto. It's not quite 2 octaves. And then the bass is our low C, 2 below middle C, to the E above middle C. So that is well over 2 octave in range. So the bass in this piece not only has the most number of subject entries, but it also covers the most territory on the keyboard. Ki- um, Fingering. I'm not going to dwell on that. I'm just going to put it up on the screen here, and you can do with it what you like. I've already done quite a few videos devoted to fingering. You know that I espouse to the advice the great Rosalind Turek gave when playing Bach's music, which is to change the fingers frequently. Frequent fingering changes are essential when playing Bach's music. So you can keep your fingers fresh, you can keep the hand constantly in motion, and allow for continuity of these 3 parts, these 3 voices. What do we say? Barbara, Terry, and Fernando. Right? So do with it what you like. The the blue numbers are the right hand, the red numbers are the left hand. When you see a little slash in between 2 numbers, that means a finger substitution. Um, it's hard to write all this in. There's not a lot of room on the page, and I did enlarge this sheet music, so I hope you can read it. But as is always the case, if you have a question or a comment about any of this, feel free to leave it in the comments. I do read those, and I reply to all of them. Sometimes YouTube doesn't give me a notification, and I stumble upon a comment months later, and I feel terrible, but I didn't know it was there. So if you've done that and you haven't heard from me, I'm sorry. I haven't been notified. But otherwise, I do check and reply. So there's the fingering. And fingering, please remember, is a very personal thing. This is the fingering that works well for my hands. I have smallish, stubby shaped hands and fingers. And this is not fingering that I would have come up with when I was at this intermediate, early advanced level. This is fingering that has sort of evolved as my technique has evolved over the years to more use of the body. So anyway, you can try it out. Maybe there's something in there that works for you. But I did want to get to just talking a little bit, not too long because I don't want this to drag on for anyone, but voicing. Some things that I think about, and it's very hard to describe these things because music obviously is sound, and we're in the midst of making sounds and we're hearing it in our head and playing it, and then to describe what you're hearing, it's very, very difficult. It's much more easy to play. And I did perform this piece recently, so you can have a listen. But I tried to write down some things that are general guiding principles for me, assuming I've practiced in this fashion, taking the voices apart. Points regarding voicing. And voicing is just what you choose to bring out at any moment in the piece. Do you bring out more of the soprano, more alto, bass? It's up for you to choose. So, general principles for voicing. Variety. I don't want playing that sounds top heavy or bottom heavy or only middle heavy, right? Where the star of the show is the soprano for the whole piece. That's basically all you hear, and the others are in the background, or vice versa with another voice. I want variety and equality, equal distribution. I want each of the 3 or 4 or 5 or however many voices there are, 2 voices if it's one of the inventions. I want each of them to have more or less equitable distribution so they can be heard. They have things to say. They're like little people, So being fair with that, and contrast of register. So, assuming you've found some passages that you like and you've written a little heart by them in the music or a happy face, with that in mind, try to find variety of registers so that you're not constantly switching back and forth between soprano and alto and then occasionally bass. but maybe soprano, then bass, then alto, bass, soprano, that there's more coverage of the whole range. Remember, the bass is all the way down here, and I think, what was it, this soprano all the way up there. One, two, almost 4 octaves range in this piece. So spread it out. Try not to stay in one little zone of the keyboard. Bring out voices and parts in different registers. I try not, as much as I love the inner voices, I try not to favor one voice more than the other. I try to have much changeover. Uh, I, I won't generally bring out one single statement of a subject unless it's in the beginning, in the exposition, where we're hearing it for the first couple of times in each voice. But once the piece gets going, I don't mind bringing out a fragment of an entry and then jumping down to another voice that has another fragment, like an echo kind of thing. Because I feel that subconsciously, having done enough of this, taking voices apart, singing them, etc., mixing and matching, will automatically contribute towards good, clear playing and listening. Contrast. There was a quote that I came across, and I wrote it down. It's from the book Radio, and this is just a copy I found online that I printed out. Radio, it was written by Rudolf Arnheim, and it's from 1936. And he talks about radio programs and the different voices, and he speaks of it in a musical fashion. And he says, contrast, which makes counterpoint possible, is notoriously the most important motif in composition. Contrast, right? And variety. The more you can change up the voices so that it's not you're giving the listener 5 bars of soprano and then 5 bars of bass. Well, in a short piece, that's a big chunk of the work. Jump around, right? Jump around. Lots. Change it up. If something repeats several, like say 3 times, I find that for my ears anyway, it's nice to hold on to one voice for the first 2 repetitions so that the ear can kind of say, there it is again, okay. And then when the ear is expecting the same voice to enter a 3rd time, then like switch to another voice and surprise it, and something that is ideally far away in register. Surprising intervals, like some of the ones I mentioned, you can bring those out. One of my favorite spots in this piece is the alto in the middle of 18. She has an entry of the subject against the bass pedal tone on B flat. And that alto part, which is happening simultaneously in stretto with the soprano, I choose to bring the alto out there because I love it so much, and I want to also prepare or set up, tee up the ball. I used to be a golfer. Tee up the ball by bringing in or bringing out the few notes just before that alto entry. So in the middle of 17, and then the entry. It just sort of helps to prepare for something. If you know something's exciting, you want the listener to hear it, prepare them for it. Don't just like pick it up out of nowhere. Set it up nicely. I think that's about it. And that other point too about when a voice is absent and then finally returns. Bring that out. That's always a nice, easy technique to use. And I have one more thing to share with you, and this is a reduction that I created a few years ago to help my ears try to pin down the skeleton structure of this piece. I should say that I am not a music theorist or composer. I'm not a professional musical analyst. I'm a pianist through and through with some theory knowledge And this was just for my own practicing purposes. So, don't judge me too harshly if it doesn't fulfill some rule in a textbook somewhere. It works for me. I basically tried to remove notes that I felt were more non-harmonic tones or like passing tones, um, and just get at the key essential notes. Um, so I'm going to put that on the sheet or on the screen for you there. Just a reduction, and I'm going to play it for you. I've still marked in the entries and in black with a black bracket. The two sequences are still in pink. The missing alto is in yellow, and the stretti are in green, as in the other copy I showed you. All right? So, just some bare notes. Um, Trying to listen mostly for stepwise motion is what I do in general with Bach. Okay, so let me play this reduction for you of this Sinfonia number 8. And again, as I say, it's just largely listening from movement by step. So in any of these figurations like we have throughout the piece, uh, this is in measure 1, by the way, in the alto. C, D, B flat, C, A. Rather than hearing 5 notes, I'm listening for movement by step. C, B flat, A. I'm just trying to simplify many notes down to a few. And as I play all of them, I'm still listening for those few. La da da, la da da, rather than la da dee da da. It gets kind of notey, right? So this reduction was meant to assist, to facilitate that process of helping my ear cling and latch on to the essential notes so that it would be less notey in the final performance. And I could go on and on. I could practice the piece for you. I suppose there might be some value in that, but I'm going to have to wrap this up. Otherwise, it's going to be an epic video. 20th Century Fox picture length tutorial. We don't want that. So I do hope that this was helpful. Have fun with your practicing, for goodness sake. There's so much stress and anxiety and craziness in this world. There's a lot of traumatizing things in the news. It's hard to get out of bed sometimes. But if you have a piano or an instrument of some sort, that is a kind of therapy, whether it's your profession or not. And you can communicate your thoughts and ideas and your emotions through your instrument. And if you're lucky, you can be heard by others and move them as well. So thoughtful practicing on a regular basis. And these are some tools that will hopefully help with your own work, with whatever you're practicing at the moment. And so on that note, I'm going to wrap up this tutorial. Remember, think of your voices in this polyphonic music as individual ribbons, individual voices, characters. Read them horizontally, linearly. It'll serve you well. I'm going to wrap this video up. Thank you for watching. I wish you well with your practicing. Stay well, stay safe, and we'll see you again soon for more performances of Bach's music and practice tips. Take care. Bye bye.